What's up, guys? Paddy McDonald here, your host of Leaders with Heart, and today we're speaking with one of my best friends, Ricky Baldasso. Now, Ricky is also the chairman of freedomfarmers.com, and he's built and sold numerous successful entrepreneurial enterprises in the past. Throughout this journey, he's also really refined his ability as a marketer and copywriter, and he summed this up as being a deep connection to story and how we can ultimately connect with the people we're communicating with. And so I find so much wisdom and value in the way that Ricky expresses some of these concepts that for him are second nature, but for someone like me, really help me express my own message in a much clearer and more authentic way. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation with Ricky. We also dive into his path to becoming a published author, which is his next chapter in life, and how this journey of being a successful businessman and bringing out his story in the business world has led to now being on the path of creating stories in the publishing world as well. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this. There's so many powerful leadership insights in this conversation. And if you want to connect with either Ricky or myself, please reach out in the links in the show notes. Much love. So I'm here today with one of my best friends, Ricky Flo, and I'm so excited for this conversation, bro, because in getting to know you as a human, I'm constantly surprised by all the different dimensions of you as a person. And I'm also constantly receiving so much wisdom in the way that you show up in your life and also the way that you show up in business. There's a lot of subtle, nuanced lessons that you just embody naturally. And I'm excited to dive into some of those today. So firstly, welcome to the podcast. And yeah, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, man. I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
Yeah, amazing. So to give people a bit of background and take them on the journey of your life, I'd love to start by hearing a little bit about, your journey into business, because I know that from school, you, like myself, went straight into an accounting role and had a year at KPMG. But then you thought there's a different path available to you, and you took that leap of faith very early at 19, I believe. So I'd love to hear about that chapter of your life and kind of stepping into the world of entrepreneurship so young.
Yeah, man. So where it all started was, it's funny, I'm sitting here looking over the city because when I was 18, I had a job at KPMG, the accounting firm, for a year. And I just kind of stumbled into it. My brother worked there. I did accounting in high school. I did well in that. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but there was like a path that I just kind of stumbled into, which was that. But then one of my colleagues at KPMG, who I actually went to high school with, and we were kind of friends in high school, but then we became closer friends at KPMG. He had this eBay business on the side. And I was just like blown away at the idea that like an 18-year-old could have a business. Like it never even entered my mind as like a possibility. And I know nowadays it's a lot more normal, but going back 13 years ago, it's, to me, in my reality, it seemed like a thing that wasn't something I was aware of until that moment. And then just instantly I was curious and I was like, what? Tell me about this. And he told me a few things, but he was kind of low key, mysterious about it. But then I kind of figured out some basic things about how to do that. And then I set up my little eBay business, was importing some random products from China, selling them here, making a little bit of profit. And I wasn't making like a lot of money, but I was making enough at that, like a few months into that I was like, there's something here. Like if I was not working full time in this job and I was putting that same energy towards this other thing, there's something that could happen there. And long story short, I started my eBay business maybe 8 months into when I was working at KPMG. And then within 4 months, I left that job.
Yep.
And then I focused on eBay, and then that then emerged into all kinds of different business ventures and whatever. And fast forward 12, 13 years later, here I am.
Yeah. Amazing. And there's a bit in that 12, 13 years. So let's zoom in a little bit to some of that journey. So you had the eBay business and making some profit, and it sounds as though from that point you kind of continued to evolve that process. Like, I think it can be easy for people to, including myself, to have something that starts to work a little bit and then just be happy with that. And that, like, there's some light in that in terms of contentment, but there's also some complacency that can come in as well. And it sounds like your thinking on business continued to evolve. And, you know, knowing some of the businesses you've been involved in, I know that they're not necessarily lateral progressions in terms of the obvious next step. So what was the business that came after that eBay business?
So that business was called Ace Trade Distribution because I thought that sounded cool.
So cool.
I remember getting my little logo and thinking I was just like the king of the hill. So anyway, I was selling all kinds of random stuff, but then what happened was I had a particular product which was, it's called a golf rangefinder, and essentially it's binoculars that you can point it at a target like a golf flag and it'll tell you how far away you are. So golfers need to know precisely, like, am I 150 meters? Am I 157 meters? Because it changes what club they then use to hit the right distance. And I've been playing golf my whole life, and I didn't want to spend $500 on one of these with like the proper branded one that, you know, gets marketed on the golf channel and all of that. And I looked, you know, in China, you know, through Alibaba and these different like websites where you can find these products. And I saw that I could get them for like $80 or something like that. Pretty much the same, just without the fancy brand and all of that. So I got one for myself just because I wanted one. And I was like, this works pretty much as good as like these $500 ones. So then I ended up buying like 30 of them or something. And then I sold them. And then I bought like 100. And at this point, I branded it with my own brand. It was called Pin Sensor.
Yep.
And it had a little pin sensor logo on it. And I had pinsensor.com at the time. And so yeah, that was like the next thing, was essentially going from eBay to my own website, my own product. Then I started to learn advertising, copywriting. And then what evolved after that was then I got involved in like the kind of marketing community, Facebook groups, things like that. And then I just started interacting in the community. And then people would message me being like, do you do consulting? They might have seen something that I commented and thought it was valuable. And then like, do you do consulting? And then I started getting some marketing consulting clients, and I had a consulting agency called Metric Driven Marketer. It's primarily me, but I was working with a few freelancers to do some projects. And then that evolved into then the next business, the next, and we can get into that. But if there's anything you want to, we'll just pause there.
Yeah, amazing. So like, it sounds like the step into the pin sensor business was primarily like, it made sense as an opportunity, but also it was something that worked for you. So it made sense to bring that out into the world, whereas the eBay business sounded more like it was opportunity.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then in terms of the evolution into marketing, like, I know that marketing and copywriting is like one of your real genius zones, and you've helped me in that space as well. Is that something that just naturally came as a talent, or did you feel like you needed to like get over a bit of a learning curve to kind of start getting some traction with that?
Definitely, there was a big learning curve. And just to kind of create a bit of context about how I transitioned into that, was eBay was great because I could put things on eBay and then people would just randomly buy it. But there was lots of drawbacks to eBay because it was like such a low barrier to entry, didn't require many technical skills, that people would just see a product that's working well, get the same product from China, put it on, make it $1 cheaper, and then people would buy from them, you know. And that's what I did. I would see products that are selling and be like, well, this guy's making all this money, I'm just going to get the same product, put $1 cheaper. And something in my consciousness was like, this doesn't feel wholesome. It's like so competitive. Everyone, like, there's no real skill here. It's just arbitrage.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I had this deep desire to like have more control over my business. That's why I branded my own product and tried to make it more of a brand, the pin sensor thing. That's why I had my own website. That's why I wanted to learn advertising and copywriting and actually be at the driver's seat of like my reality. So I was definitely like, I want to be in control. That was part of it. But then I actually found it all really fascinating. Like I bought these different online courses and things. And I was like, I thought it was so interesting how, particularly advertising, like this concept that you could spend money, reach a certain amount of people. And if the advertising was good enough, and a big enough percentage of people would click on the ad, a big enough percentage of people would buy the product. And the reason my marketing thing was called metric driven marketer was because I was so about like the numbers.
Yep.
So it kind of took that accounting vibe into marketing where it was like, and there's all these metrics in marketing, like what's the cost per click, which is the amount that you spend divided by the amount of clicks that you get on your ad. So if you spend $100, you get 100 clicks. It's a $1 cost per click. Then it's like the conversion rate. What percentage of people buy your product that go to your website? Then there's all these other metrics like what's the cost per sale? What's the average sale value? Like these different things. And then how they all work together, return on ad spend, ROI, all this stuff. And I just found that all fascinating. So I kind of took that advertising vibe, then my curiosity about being in the driver's seat of my own business through being a marketer, and it combined it all. And and that's kind of how I got into all of that.
Yeah, amazing, man. So I heard in that like this shift from focusing purely on the product, and there's obviously more nuance to this, but let's say the tangible value, to really recognizing that there was a lot of intangible value you could create in your brand, in the story you told to people through the copywriting, in the way that you connected to people's visions and dreams and things like that. And it's interesting, we'll get to the part of your story now where you're deep into being an author and writing books and stories. And I'm noticing this thread, this through line, right, of like your ability to connect to story and the value that inherently comes with that as well. Is there anything you want to say on like story and intangible value relating to the marketing chapter of your life?
I feel like the only thing that I'll say for now is that I feel like if I reflect back on my entrepreneurial journey, it's just been one thing's led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. And as I've evolved, I've had more influence over like consciously how the next step evolves. But even without that, things have naturally gone from one thing to the next. And I feel like that's actually what story is as well, is it's like a story is just a sequence of things that one thing leads to the next, leads to the next. But I feel like being a great storyteller or a great entrepreneur or a great leader is about then layering on your conscious awareness to then lead where the story goes.
Yeah.
Because the story is going somewhere.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything consciously to influence how our life pans out, it's going to pan out a certain way.
Yeah.
But if I just noticed that the more I've become self-aware about my values and what I'd love to create and all of that, the more I've been able to feel like the creator of the story and manipulate where the story goes, while still knowing that the story is going, like, there's so much energy of like my whole past and everything is interconnected that it's all just throwing me in a certain direction anyway. But I do believe that I can influence to some degree where it's all going. And that's what I think like being a leader is all about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So on this journey of your evolving businesses across the years, so I'd love to hear about how the leadership story is unfolding amongst this as well. So you mentioned, for example, you were bringing some freelancers in to, well, firstly, I'd love to hear actually, you know, your evolution in becoming the leader of your own story, and then whatever you want to add on top of that around bringing other people along for the ride in that journey as well.
Totally. So one thing I'll thread in here is that a big influence on my life has been like personal development, workshops and things like that. And so I'd started my eBay business and I was maybe like 6 weeks into it or something like that. And I went to a Tony Robbins event, and then I just, that supercharged me with like extra vision and possibility and everything.
You can do that.
And then so that's when I actually decided at the Tony Robbins event, like, I'm quitting KPMG. I'm going to make this work and I'll figure it out. And then I just took that kind of like personal development vibe into everything. And yeah, just at every step, like, the more I wanted to create, it just required more leadership of myself. And then that emerged into then leading others. So I remember I went to another Tony Robbins event a few years later when I'm into the marketing agency stuff. And I came back and I was just a business machine. I remember I made something like 13 sales in like 2 weeks or something. And then all of a sudden I went from having a couple of clients to now I've got like 15 clients. And honestly, it was too much, too fast. And I kind of had some challenges with, doing a great job fulfilling on what I'd sold as a marketing agency. I was scrambling to get different freelancers to support, and a couple clients weren't satisfied. So I had to like refund them. And then I was out of pocket paying the freelancers. And honestly, it was just chaotic, right? But I look back on that with a smile on my face, because I feel like I threw myself in the deep end, which made me realize, like, okay, I need to up level as a leader. I need to be more organized. I need to be more systematic. I need to get the right people and to train them right and to treat them right, and just like all this stuff. Because I remember I had conflict with the freelancers. I had conflict with the clients. It was a mess. And I was used to doing this like physical product business where like I never would meet any or talk to any clients. It was all just operational kind of like, but now I'm dealing with clients and freelancers. And it was, I learned a bunch of things, but I think the main thing I learned was that I need to evolve as a leader to be able to manage these relationships, to have everything working together. And then since then that's evolved into business partnerships, having teams, but having it more structured, growing, still trying to grow fast, but in a more scalable way where things are more organized, the business model is more on point. So I kind of got out of services. Not that there's anything wrong with services, but I realized that my natural skill sets were more on like marketing and operations. So I preferred the product side of things to be, so I got into essentially online courses where I wasn't the creator of online courses, but I would partner with people that had online courses, would build out libraries of online courses. And then that way it's more operational. It's like we set up the course, we film it, we edit it, we package it up, and then it's pretty much marketing and operations. But then the team side of things was then, it was more about managing the business rather than managing the service delivery. That was just my journey. But yeah, bottom line is I learned that there was a big gap in myself, and I've just continually learned more about all kinds of leadership related things so that I could then better manage myself and better lead myself and then, my team. So yeah, it's a bit about what happened.
Amazing. I remember one of the first things you shared with me was an amazing leadership lesson and real code around leadership, but I feel like it's relating to later in your story, so I'm going to hold off on getting you to share that one. So we'll come back to that. But right now I'd love to hear a bit more about that journey into the online course side of the business, because I know that's been something that's been a big part of your success and your life. And again, it's another evolution. It's a very different business to being a freelance marketer and to selling rangefinders. So what led you into the online course business?
Yeah, dude. So one of my clients he owned a domain, roping.com, roping.com, which roping is a rodeo sport. He's like, I own this domain. And I knew, even though I was kind of relatively new to business, I knew that like owning a domain like that, like owning something like golf.com or tennis.com, like that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that roping is a niche rodeo sport. It's not big in Australia. Like it's even very niche in the US and things like that. But I still knew like, this is like pretty cool. Like there's something here.
Had you heard of roping before?
I hadn't heard of it. And I was like, what is this? And just instantly, because I was learning about marketing. So something I didn't mention earlier was whilst I was doing all this stuff, early business stuff, I tore 3 ligaments in my knee water skiing. And then I was on crutches for like 12 weeks. And I was in a lot of pain and all of that. So I was just like in bed a lot. And I just used that as an opportunity to go hardcore on learning about marketing. So I bought all these online courses and read all these books, and I was just like hardcore in student mode, immersion. Like I probably like learned, it was like my full-time job learning marketing.
Yeah.
So I gained an appreciation for online courses because I was learning so much from online courses. And then I felt like I had all this knowledge and awareness, but I feel like I had limited ability to put it into practice because I didn't have the right role in a business to fully do it. I was like a marketing consultant, and that was like limited to what I could do because I was learning about marketing, but I was also learning about like just the whole scope of like online business.
Yeah.
So then one of my clients had this domain, and he was like, he just said like, would you be open on, he was happy with the work I was doing for his other business. And he was like, would you be open to like partnering on this and like creating some kind of business with this domain? And I was like, yeah. And then we ended up creating an online course business for on roping.com. It's still around today.
Yeah.
And we sold it in April of 2021. That was the first time I'd ever sold a business, and that really changed my life. And but yeah, I worked on that for like 5 or 6 years, something like that. And that was my main focus. I was still doing a little bit of marketing, consulting on the side. And then I got involved in 2 other course businesses, one which has sold, one which I still earn my shares in today, and which is we're planning to sell at some point in 2024. And so, yeah, I just kind of gained an appreciation for online courses, had a client that gave me an opportunity, got into that. And then that just kind of cracked the doors open to then kind of building my confidence and expertise in online course businesses, and got partnered on, a couple other businesses. And that's kind of, and then how that leads to all the writing and stuff is that what I realized was that through all of the skills of, marketing, product, operations, leadership, all the things, it seemed like in my journey with the business model I was involved in, which was online courses, it seemed like the skill set that moved the needle the most was copywriting. Was how do we write the right words that get someone to click on an ad? And how do I write the right words to get someone that goes to my website to actually buy the product? That seemed like it was the highest leveraged skill out of everything. So I developed quite a fascination for that, and I went deep into copywriting online courses, and I learned all about it, and I put things into practice, and I saw the results. And because I had that metric driven side of me, I could see, okay, this copy for this ad is getting 3 times the result of this copy for this ad. And I just found it interesting. I was like, it's just so interesting how words can influence people to make decisions differently to other words, and especially decisions around spending money on something. But then I was just fascinated on copywriting. And then I was like, as I started to get more into like my spiritual journey, I was like, okay, now I want to use words to influence people beyond just buying random roping DVDs, right? I was like, can I influence myself and others through writing to live a more fulfilling, creative life that feels more artistic and expressive of self, and just all of that. So the copywriting then led into the writing, just like everything's gone from one thing to the next.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, there's a few pieces in there I want to double click on and go deeper into. And I can't not just come back to the roping thing because I just find it hilarious that, you know, we've known each other for a while, and we've gone very deep in terms of getting to know each other. And then I just find out like a month ago, right, that this was 5 years of your life, and that you've had 8-time world champions like host you at their place in Texas and like teach you like the best in the world, like not just the best in the world now, but the best in the world
ever.
like ever have taught you how to do their craft. Like, how did I not know about this until this deep into our friendship? And
well, I feel like there's probably lots that we still don't know about each other. There's so much that we both lived, and but it was crazy experience. Going to Texas and living with these guys, and, you know, 2 7-time world champions. I've literally stayed with at each of their places, one in Texas, one in California, and then like probably the greatest roping instructor that's ever lived, that's done over 1,000 clinics and that has taught some of the best ropers ever. And like, it's funny because I just went in with like, I'm the marketer business dude, but I got an opportunity that for ropers would be like their dream. You know, like I've played golf my whole life. The idea of living with Tiger Woods for a few days is like, that would be incredible. But what I got to experience that I didn't think too much of, just like, whatever, I'm just going to film some stuff. And what was funny was that one of the courses that we created was, the whole concept was, we've got this random kid from Australia. And I was vegan at the time. And in Texas, they all eat so much meat. We've got this random skinny vegan from Australia, which, you know, for the US is like, it's novelty, right? It's
could
like,
be out of space.
Exactly. And it's like, we got this random skinny vegan kid from Melbourne, Australia, that's never been on a horse before, you know, it's never held a rope before. Can we, in 48 hours, teach him like the basics of roping? And that was kind of like the angle. And then they're like filming me for the first time, like holding a rope. And they're like, just try and throw the rope around this little fake, you know, horns on like a fence thing. And like, I don't know how to hold the rope. I just throw it, and I was just a complete mess. It'd be like giving someone a golf club and they like throw the golf club and they think that that's how you do it. It was just like ridiculous. Yeah. Or like grabbing the club and then hitting the ball with the other side, the wrong side. I was just completely lost. And it's quite an experience, and just funny how I was led on this random journey of doing that. And there's more random things like that I've done. But I feel like more recently, with more self-awareness of who I am, what I would love to create, there's been more like, let's say, less randomness and more like conscious, like, I actually know what I want to create. So, but the whole journey's been fun.
I love that so much. It's like, I can relate to that as well, where that sense of almost like that younger version of myself was really even subconsciously seeking that novelty and that just extremity of experience. And now like I'm much more focused, and that has felt like an evolution. But like definitely nothing wrong with the former.
Great memories. And I think part of me kind of got off on how random it was at the time, because I was in the marketing industry, and it's kind of hard to separate yourself from all these guys, especially given that I was like a small fish in a big pond. Like there's all these big entrepreneurs making so much money, and they've got these big businesses. And it's like, how am I going to separate myself as like a 24-year-old kid? It's like, he's the guy that's got that rodeo business. That's right.
Amazing. I really want to also go deeper into the conversation that you opened up there around copywriting, because as you said, like you noticed that as the highest leverage activity that you could focus your energy on to shift the needle on the entire business. And that's massive, right? It's like the 80-20 rule. Let's do the 20% of actions that give us 80% of the results. And so I'd love if you have any tips or any like even mindsets that you can share on copywriting that might be helpful for people that this isn't their genius zone.
Totally. Well, I'll actually zoom out a bit by saying that copywriting is essentially a micro skill within influence. So the ability to influence yourself and others, in my opinion, is the highest leverage thing you can do in business. Because that's, even leadership, I would say, is a micro skill under influence, because you're influencing people to be part of your team and to follow your mission and to, you know, do their role, and to essentially, if they're a full-time employee, you're influencing them to give you 40 hours a week of their life to support your mission and your goals as a leader, right? So I think influence is the macro skill. And the biggest thing I would say about copywriting is that, so copywriting is influencing someone through words to buy a product or a service. Let's think of it as like that. So it's writing ads, it's writing words on your website, it's writing emails, social media posts, all this, all with the intention of influencing someone to become a customer or a client, right? And then it's also words to then retain customers and clients. And how do you express, you know, and share with your clients summaries of like what you've been delivering to them so they realize the value that they're getting. Like it's just the whole thing. But one tip I would give is, one thing that I generally recommend for myself and others is to sell products and services that you would be a customer of. When I was doing roping, and since I haven't said it, but there was another business called Eventing Training, which is another horse sport, and then Freedom Farmers, which is a farming education business. I'm not into any of those things. Now I'm more self-aware and I'm focused on things that actually I'm more interested in. But what my tip is for copywriting is, would you click on the ad? You're writing an ad about your coaching business or about your just whatever it is, would you click on that ad? Like, if yes, then that's like the first little test on how effective your copywriting is. And then it's like, if you got some kind of website page that's generating inquiries for your coaching or your service or whatever, like if you weren't you, but you were just some random person, would you read that and be like, this sounds great, I want to do this? Because if not, then probably others won't either, right? And to kind of loop in some of the metric-driven marketer vibes, you don't need everyone to click on the ad. You don't need everyone to sign up for to inquire about your service. You actually only need a very small percentage, as low as like 1% in some cases. It depends and it varies, but like if you're looking at your own copywriting and you're like, I would click on this, I would totally fill out this form to hear more about this, or I would totally pay the $99 for this introductory offer or whatever it is. It's like, then you're onto something. And if you're like, no, I wouldn't, then it's like, well, what can you change? Like, what would, you know, get you curious? What would get you like, yeah, I'll bite on this kind of thing? It's really about influencing yourself. And what's amazing is that when you get really deep into the whole world of copywriting, it's not just about talking about your product and service. It's about story. It's about getting people to resonate with like your values and your kind of like ideas. And it's like a really creative act. And so the more, or like another little side tip that it's not mine, but I've heard from someone about writing fiction books, is if you want your reader to be curious about your book, you're the first reader of the book when you're writing it. So if you know what's going to happen and you know how all the loose ends are going to tie together, then your reader might as well when they're reading it. But if you're writing it and you don't even know where it's leading, then you're curious about what's going to happen, right?
Wow.
And so that's like similar thing. Like that's more of a fiction writing. It's less about copywriting, but even taking the general gist of that into copywriting, it's like you want people to get your first job is to get people to read the headline. And then the job of the headline is to get people to read the second line. Mm-hmm. The job of the second line is to get them to read the third line. The job of the third line is to get them to read the fourth line. So it's about creating this slippery slope, is often what the copywriters call it, where people haven't even realized that they've just spent 3 minutes and they're, 300 words into your, copy for your ad or your website or whatever, that then you've made this progression of like good points that have like just said all the right things to then get them perfectly positioned to be like, this makes sense to do this next step, to fill out this form to inquire about this service or to pay this $100 for this thing or whatever. So it's about this like step-by-step sequence of words. It's telling a certain story. It's conveying a certain information in a certain way to then get them to then be like, decision, sign up, inquire, buy, whatever it might be. So, and with that, I'll tell you one other lesson, which is you always want to have a call to action. You take people on a little journey through your little story or whatever it is. Then at the end, like generally speaking, you want to have like some kind of like, do this now, like, message me to learn more, or sign up here, or click here to buy this thing, you know? Because if you're just telling a story and you're getting them all perfectly lined up to make a decision, but then you just end it, it's like, well, now what? And there's a reason why all these Netflix TV series at the end of every episode, it's like, oh, now I need to watch the next episode. Because that's what they're doing, is they're taking you down the slippery slope.
Gotcha. So for people that like, this is, including myself in this, that this is not the natural skill set. Like this is something for me. I find this probably my biggest edge in business is building this journey and building this progression that can take people down towards action. Is this something that you feel like all business people, or all entrepreneurs at least, or even leaders, I guess, in their own way, need to have some level of skill in? Or is it something that you feel like is best delegated to those experts?
I would say that more on the side of like, I believe leaders need to have a certain grasp on this, and then there's certain things that can funnel down towards team members and everything. But like, I would say this, for example, if we think of copywriting as the words that express your business, the words on your ads, social media posts, website, emails, everything. If you just like, if we zoom out of the online landscape for a second and we just think of expressing your business through words, even spoken, imagine you just had some new intern that's like on some big stage at some big industry conference being like, just using their untrained new perspective on your business, like just preaching to this massive audience of your industry and just saying all this stuff that isn't in alignment with your business's values and mission and everything. That's the equivalent of what's happening if some like untrained person, or even a trained person that doesn't understand your business
and the values
and all that, if they're just doing your marketing for you and they're running advertising and they're doing whatever, like, for a point of reference, and it varies per industry, but just general gist, if you spend $30 on Facebook, you're probably going to reach 1,000 people. It might be anywhere from $10 to $100 depending on industry, because some are more competitive. But let's just say hypothetically $30, you're going to reach 1,000 people. Companies will often just drop $3,000 on advertising, like it's just, we're going to do some advertising, whatever. That's going to reach, if my math's correct, which I don't like to do public math, but let's just say it's about 100,000 people. If you spend $3,000, it's 100,000 people. Imagine having some random person that doesn't know your core values, mission, everything, just speaking to 100,000 people in your industry. So we're in Australia here. Imagine the MCG on grand final day and it's halftime and you got some intern or some consultant grabbing the mic and being like, I want to tell you about, insert business name. And then they just say all this stuff that's just not congruent with the brand. That's what's happening if leaders aren't on top of the messaging and the branding of their business, and they bring in even a high skilled agency or whatever, or on the lower, on the other side of the spectrum, just like a low skilled intern with no experience. If they're the ones in charge of social media and advertising and website and all that, that's what's happening. So now, does the CEO or the head of, whatever division need to be the one that's writing the social media posts and the emails? No, but they need to be the ones that are clear on what does this business stand for? What is our mission? What is our vision? What are our core values? What do we believe in? What's our story? What's our culture? Because then if you take an intern or an agency and they're indoctrinated into that, then that's where that can funnel through. And the way I see it is, it's like, imagine you got water in a glass or in a jug, and you pour it into one glass, and then from that glass into another, into another. It's the same water that's getting funneled through each glass. But if you got all these empty glasses and people are just going into the Yarra River and they're just putting all kinds of junk water in it, and then they're being like, cheers, to everyone else. It's like, that's not the way to do it. So I feel like the leaders need to be the one that are clarifying, like, what do we stand for? What are we really about? And, if you look at any old videos of like Steve Jobs, that's what he's all about. He's all about, like, what does Apple really stand for? And then he's saying, like, we believe people with passion can change the world. It's not about we've got better microprocessors than Microsoft or whatever. And when Steve Jobs wasn't at Apple and Apple was struggling, it's because they were focused on all this technical stuff and they forgot what the business was about. Steve Jobs came back and he reminded them, like, these are our values. This is what we believe in. Then the marketing is reflecting all of that magical, creative energy rather than this like micro technical stuff that isn't really what people care about. Like, if you think about Apple and you think about Microsoft, it's not the one's better or worse. They're both massive businesses and people love both of them. But Apple, when I think of it, I think creative. Like, there's this creative allure to it. I think Microsoft, real technical, like organized, like whatever. But I'm not thinking, one of their microchip processors is, has this much RAM on it or whatever. Like, that's like so not what it's about. And that's what I think, with business, it's like, what do we really stand for? What's the energy that our brand kind of radiates? And then everything is micro to that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I guess even Microsoft have done a great job in building their brand and their story as the functional, technical one as well, right?
And if I think about Excel compared to Google Sheets, I feel like I can do a lot more damage with Excel. Like, I feel like there's something about that. It's like I'm in there, I'm crunching numbers, I'm doing all kinds of formulas and stuff. Google Sheets, I can pretty much do the same things, but it's just like, it doesn't have that same, for me anyway, there's something about it, Yeah. And they pretty much do the same thing, just like a Mac does the same as like a Microsoft laptop.
On numbers. Yeah, man. No, I love those reflections, and how that copywriting piece you've really clearly explained is a natural byproduct of being so attuned to the internal understanding of vision and story and how it all flows out. And yeah, I really see how influence externally comes from influence internally, and then that is going to flow into the copywriting.
Yeah, dude. And one thing on that I'll say, to just go more broadly, talking about like the leader with the vision, and then it kind of funnels down into all the team members and everything. The way I think of it is like, any business that I start, it starts inside of my consciousness. And that's the seed. So it's like that seed can grow into a big business with a big team and all this. And then all these people, they're focused on making that mission of that business, thrive and everything. But that seed, like the underlying like energy of that business and what it becomes, it starts within the founder.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And then it's kind of like a tree that grows. Then each branch of that tree is its own thing, and then it can express itself as it does. Just like a branch of a business, you know, if someone's the leader of a branch or a leader of a division, that is their you know, branch of the tree that they get to express. But then it's like, then their, metaphorically, like their consciousness is the seed that then is in collaboration with, you know, the rest of the thing. But I feel like it's just one of the biggest things I see that I just, every time I hear someone say it, it makes a part of me cringe, because through experience, I just know that it's just not the way to go about it, is when people say like, I just want to delegate that. It's just like like, that's not how it's going to work. It'd be like saying like a tree saying like, I want to delegate the growing of my leaves to like just some other thing that's not the tree. It's like if you're the leader, you're the creator of the whole thing.
Sure.
And your influence, your energy needs to go into everything. You don't have to write the social media posts. You don't have to write the website copy. But if you're not at least funneling your energy in that direction in some form, it'll take a life of its own, and it could then take a life of its own that isn't in alignment with your vision. And that's how businesses get corrupted as they grow. Say again? Disjointed, exactly. And that's how disharmony happens in the team, and different leaders in the team have different visions, and it can get all messy. If you're really a leader, you'll create harmony between everyone, and you can still allow people to have their own vision and everything. But the way I see it is, it's like, if you're a leader, you hold the vision for everyone else to grow into and to share their vision within that. But there needs to be alignment. And that's why culture and things are so important as you grow a business, because one leader within the business wants one thing and another leader wants the opposite. You're going in two different directions. The whole thing's just going to fall apart.
I love that, man. I love that. That really resonates with the lesson that I touched on earlier that I wanted to hear you speak about, which is, I remember you said to me that a leader creates a vision large enough for other people's visions to fit within. And like, I'd love for you to explain that in a bit more detail, because when I heard that the first time, it just resonated so strongly, and I'd never heard it described that way before. But it really made me think of, you know, like how a movie director creates, or a writer creates a universe for all the characters, hopes and dreams to be realized within. And yeah, so please.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, that, you know, we're using words like leader, creator, entrepreneur, etc. I want to just create a broader perspective here, that there's archetypes that humans can embody, right? And those archetypes get expressed in like job titles and things like that, you know, head of marketing, you know, assistant to the sales rep, or like whatever. There's all these different titles, right? And they're essentially archetypes. And as a leader, there are leader archetypes. And I see there's like a kind of progression of archetypes that we evolve through, just like a professional will evolve through their career into different titles, right? But as a leader or an entrepreneur or like the creator or founder, that's like, there's no path laid out. You kind of got to create the path for yourself. And within myself, I've kind of seen an evolution of, I see it as like contributor is kind of like the baseline, is like you're contributing to something. You know, you're writing copy for a business, whatever. You're a marketer for the business, contributor. Then I see that evolves to manager, and then that evolves to leader, is how I see it. So I see the manager kind of manages the contributors, and then I see the leader leads the managers that then manage the contributors. Then I see that evolves into like more of like a director or a partner. So that's where I see people that then they're adding enough value through enough level of leadership that then it justifies them having some form of ownership in the business, because they're directing the leaders that are managing the contributors. It's like a higher level of leadership. Then I see it starts to evolve into like creator. So you're like creating like a whole new like thing. So you're creating like a new product line or something that needs directors, leaders, managers, and contributors, right? Then I see
So
it gets
the founder
so
would
I
be
would
in that
say
archetype.
founder. That's like the founder archetype. But it doesn't have to just be limited to founders. It could be certain level leaders in a business that create a whole new initiative, like a whole new product line or product suite, or even like a new business within a business. You know what I mean? So creator is like someone that's actually innovating and pioneering a whole new thing. Then I see above that is visionary, which is what we're talking about now, which is it's even beyond that, where there's a big enough level of capacity to envision what's possible that then everything kind of fits into that. So, and that's what I see all the biggest businesses in the world, Amazon, Facebook, etc. I see their founders as visionaries because they just assume that there's no limit to what's possible. Just because the thing with visions is you can just whip visions out of nowhere. But what I've noticed through my journey is the things that I envision now are on such a higher magnitude and scale than what I envisioned 10 years ago. Literally, when I was in the eBay thing, I was envisioning like, whoa, imagine if I was making $10,000 a month with, these things and whatever. And that's great. And, I still think that there's no right or wrong, but my point is that my vision was limited to that business, that model, that whatever. Whereas now I feel like even just as like a playful exercise, I can be like, what would it be like if there was a business that had like just the whole world was working on one business, or the whole community of this was just, it was all consolidated in one business. Like I never would have even thought in that scale before. And that's where things like Facebook can be like, or like Meta, and then there's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. And each of those are a whole beast, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that's where you can have like Amazon, and then you've got like Audible and these different businesses that are just like, they're a whole thing in their own right, but they're part of like this bigger vision. And so, the role of the visionary, in my opinion, is to create a vision that serves some form of mission or purpose that is so large that there's pretty much no limit to what can fit within that.
Okay.
So, for example, I'm not the biggest fan of Facebook and Meta necessarily, and I'm not the biggest user of it, but I am to a certain extent. And so whatever. But if we look at Mark Zuckerberg, my understanding is that Meta's mission is to connect the whole world. And that sounds so broad. And if you're a smaller business, you'd want to be more specific to kind of get going on a more clear mission. But at a certain scale, like that's the kind of mission.
Yeah.
And eBay Ricky back, 12, 13 years ago, he wasn't thinking, I'm here to connect the whole world. He was thinking, I want to make some money selling random things from China. You know what I mean? But as we grow, we get towards these more broad missions, right? And I feel like the role of the visionary is to believe that it's possible to have enough harmony between a team that everyone can be satisfied with what they're doing because they're making their vision come true. And being the top visionary that has everyone's visions inside of you isn't the point of this. The point of this is to have the vision that feels authentic for the leader, and then to work in harmony for others to fit within that. So if someone's vision is to have a business that has 10 employees and it's a certain size and it gives them a certain lifestyle, great, because then that person gets to live the life that they want. And then there's 10 other people that they get to live their vision within that vision. And this is happening anyway, by the way. Even if everyone thinks that they're independent, we're all connected and we're all working within some kind of vision anyway. It's just a matter of how we perceive it. But even if everyone was an independent like contractor working for themselves, there would still be so much collaboration that there would be actually these visions that are like kind of grouped together. You know what I mean?
Less defined.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear that, man. I really hear as well fact that all of these archetypes are available to all of us as well. It's not like
Totally.
we're only one of these.
100%.
Yeah, and
I call it the internal org chart.
yeah,
Like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, who now has Meta with, let's call it, I don't know, 100,000 employees. I don't know exactly, but let's just say that. I perceive it as like the seed of his consciousness that started Facebook was a seed that had 100,000 archetypes in it. And he started as the coder. And then he grew into the, you know, the manager of the development team. And then he grew into this. And now he's like the CEO of a massive ass business. You know what I mean? But I do think that's a good point, that like we all have these archetypes, but some of them are just dormant. And sometimes we have to go through the journey to then discover, you know, it's like you're not going to discover the leader of operations until you have a team to lead, you know what I mean? So as we go down the journey, the archetypes like kind of unravel. And then at a certain point, it's like, whoa, there's so many archetypes inside of me. I understand operations, marketing, product. I understand all these different moving pieces. And then with time, you just understand it more and more. And then it's just like this whole universe of archetypes inside.
Beautiful. Yeah, I really hear in that as well, like the humility of understanding that, like, by creating a vision that enables the other visions to fit into it, there's such a mutually beneficial relationship that's formed there, where neither role is better or worse as well. It's like, if there's someone whose vision is to, have a 9-to-5 job that pays $40,000 a year and means they can support their family, it's obviously on a very minimal salary, like, but that level of balance they have in their life is enough for them and they're happy with that. Like, amazing. If they're getting to live out their dream and that's actually like what they're wanting, then that's incredible that they're getting to do that and they're willing to play that role for the visionary. Like, what a gift as well. And so there's such I hear in what you're saying there, a recognition of like the fundamental importance of everyone playing their own unique role in the ecosystem, rather than necessarily, like, sometimes I know I've seen within myself and in the world as well, leaders and visionaries, it can be easy for us to think, I've created this or I've led this, therefore, like, I'm better than the people that are following. But ultimately, it's a co-creation, and everyone's contribution is, I would suggest, like, equal.
Yeah, dude. And what I'd say to that is, I feel like all roles are needed. So if you zoom out to like the highest perspective, it's like everything's needed. And if any of it was not there, then the system wouldn't work. So if you look at it from like the highest level, you really can see that it's all relevant and it's all needed. And one thing I would say as well, like on the kind of humility piece, is that sometimes what creates the expansion for an individual, I know it's been the case for me, is it's having a real reverence for each role. Because one thing I like to say is that a teacher needs a student and a student needs a teacher. Like, the even concept of a student only exists in the polarity of the dynamic of them having a teacher and vice versa. And what I feel is that within myself, the extent to which I can teach is very much predicated on the extent to which I can learn. And the more I can embody the archetype of the student, the more I can embody the archetype of the teacher. And to kind of close the loop on this kind of archetype chat is that, so I went through, contributor, manager, leader, partner/director, creator, visionary. I actually perceive that there's one final archetype within the way I see it, which is the channel. And I see the channel is kind of like the one that's open to be whatever role is needed, which then allows all of the archetypes to come through. Because if someone is fixated on being the teacher or the contributor or the manager or whatever archetype, then there's a certain level of identification with that doesn't allow further expansion. Or maybe they perceive yeah, I can be a manager and maybe I'll grow as a manager and then I'll just be a really good manager. But it's like the channel archetype, in my opinion, is like the shape shifting, multi-dimensional archetype that can be a channel or a medium for what's needed in that moment. And one thing that I like to say is that sometimes the chat, so if someone's the contributor, the manager, the leader, the partner, the creator, the visionary, they might think that they're progressing. But then when they reach channel state, what might be most needed is to be a contributor.
Yep.
So it goes like a full circle.
Yep.
So, you know, that like sometimes what might be most needed would be Mark Zuckerberg getting on the ground floor with the developers to like fix some kind of development issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or another way I think of this is like in an education business, I see the contributor level is as like the student. Like in an education business, there needs to be students. So I see it as student and then teacher and then leader, partner, creator, visionary, channel. But sometimes the channel needs to be a student. So that's where I see how it all kind of loops in together.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. You hear of some like founders and CEOs who get in the call centers, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Answer the customer complaints and just like it's the best access point to the front line as well and to actually understanding what's going on.
And then that's sometimes the insights that are on the phone or by looking at the customer support emails or these kinds of things that are usually for the entry-level people into a business. Sometimes the insight from the visionary or the channel within those kinds of activities spark the innovation for the vision.
Yep.
So that's where like I feel like it's so important as a leader to really appreciate every role in the business and every archetype because it all works together.
Yeah.
And even you know, if someone's a visionary and the extent of their contribution is like board meetings every month with like all of the like executives or whatever, and then if some brilliant vision or idea or innovation comes from that meeting, it's all the energy that's funneled up through the business that makes its way into that board meeting that then allows that to emerge, and then that funnels all the way down. It's a whole ecosystem. And I feel like just remembering the importance of every role keeps everyone humble and allows the harmony to exist. Because my experience has been, if I or anyone starts to think that they're better than anyone, that's where disharmony gets created and it can be a chaotic mess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to hear you speak a bit more about where you're at now and like what you're really focused on at the moment, because I know that you've had this evolution through some of those archetypes in your own business journey, and now you're applying a lot of this to creative pursuits. And so I'd love to hear you explain like what you're up to and also like why creativity has been such a important part of your life.
So I think it's funny how we've led to this point, because I would say that since I sold roping.com and eventingtraining.com in April of 2021, it's been a little over 2.5 years now, has been a really humbling period for me, because I had at that point, call it 10 years of business experience, and I had this big high of like, I sold 2 businesses and now I feel like a level of success and freedom that I've never felt before. But then it was like, I realized within myself that I didn't feel like I necessarily wanted to just then keep growing in that business direction. I was like, I want to actually explore some other things. I want to learn how to sing. I want to write a book. I want to just like explore more creative expression. And it was really humbling because I had 10 years in a certain direction with a lot of confidence that had been accumulated, and like a network and like results that I could leverage for the next thing if I wanted to raise money for another business or build a team or whatever. There was a lot like in that direction that I could leverage. But it took a real like ego death and kind of like decision to reinvent myself to, you know, the main 2 things I've kind of leaned into is learning how to sing and writing with the intention of being an author. And that felt like a calling specifically on the writing piece. And then the singing was more just like I felt like that would expand my heart and my ability to like just overall express myself more in the world. So it's been really humbling, like really, because I feel like I'd started pretty much, even though I have the copywriting experience, it just with the more of an intention of being like an author of like, you know, fiction and kids books and even nonfiction and stuff. It's just it's an adaptation from that, but it's quite different still, you know, just like singing opera is different to singing rap, you know? So, so it's been really humbling. But essentially what I've done is I've written a lot and I've sung a lot, and I feel like I've found my voice more and more, and I feel like I'm still very much on the journey there. And my intentions are writing books, and I've got various concepts that that are different stages. And one of the humbling things for me with my journey, but it feels like it's just I'm finding myself a bit, is that with business, everything felt so linear. It's like I do this and this happens. I do this and this happens. Whereas with writing, for me, it feels like I know that the kind of writing I want to do is it's like expressing what I'm feeling. And I want to take people on journeys where they can feel the same things that I'm feeling. But feelings are about the least linear thing that you could imagine, right? So one day I'm feeling this, one day I'm feeling that. And sometimes I'll like write something that's like really great and that stems from a certain feeling. And then it's like months until I feel that same way. And it feels like hard to like continue that, because it's like, you know, so what I actually now have felt within my own creative process that I, you know, seems like what I'm honing in on is when I'm feeling something, I want to capture as much writing from that feeling as I possibly can, so that it's just such like a transmission of that and such an internal embodied experience of that feeling that if the next day I wake up not feeling as good, I can read what I've written and it's enough there to like bring me back to that feeling so I can continue it, you know? And I think that, like one way of explaining this is it's like if someone's like in some romantic little town in like the Netherlands or something and they're feeling a certain way, which is inspiring a certain form of creativity, if that holiday ends and then they're back in their hometown, it's like, oh, I just can't finish the story because I'm not in that energy. If they've written enough and it's such a like a in-person, like embodied, like I feel this, then hopefully they'd be able to continue that from wherever they are, because it then becomes who they are. And that's something that I've learned from all of this, is that, you know, in my journey of exploring all this creative stuff, a lot of it is exploration. And then it feels like it gets into certain levels of like actual, like embodying, like this is actually who I am now. Like I'm not playing around writing anymore. Like I'm a writer. I'm not just trying to find my voice. Like I'm a singer, you know what I mean? I may not be Whitney Houston or Frank Sinatra, but like, you know, and I think that something about claiming that then allows a bit more of like that creativity to flow. And I feel like I'm at the stage where I've kind of like done a lot of exploration, and now I'm like, I'm a writer, I'm a singer. And amazing. I feel like, you know, in the coming months and years, I'll be excited to have certain things to share with the world that I'm really proud of, you know, and I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. But that's all part of my journey of humbling myself.
Awesome to witness, brother. I really have loved and also been a bit like terrified of watching your creative process with a book that you're writing as well, right? Where I've seen you like go so deep into these writing portals where you've like gotten so much out. And also it from my experience, it's felt like it's really almost been the thing, you know, it's like almost there.
Oh,
and it's like
so many times, dude.
I'm like, oh my God, the book's almost done. I'm going to get to hear it. And then next thing I know, it's like, no, it's actually gone in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
And like, I've really witnessed the humility, but also the trust in the fact that like, there is a process here, and the, you know, the ultimate story that's being written is going to be like an excavation under all of these layers. And, this has been a, year and a half longer process that you've been writing this main
There's
book.
a specific book that I've been working on for coming on 19 months.
Yeah.
And and it feels like, I mean, I'm still excited to get it done and I'm still focused on it, but it's really like, because I've put so much energy into it and it feels more of like a artistic expression. I really want to feel this sense of like, it feels like it's got a mind of its own almost, like the creation. And I just want to be in honor of like what it is. That there's times where I felt like it's all so clear, but then as soon as it feels like it's so clear, then it throws another little curveball into the mix. And so it's been a journey, and I'm glad that I've cultivated the qualities of patience and resilience from my business journey, because I feel like, if it wasn't for that, I think I would have given up by now. But I'm sure it'll all be worth it when it all comes together. But even if this one book that it's taken me on this journey, even if that book never got written, or even if it took another 20 years to get written, something about the pursuit has like just created so much evolution. It's like the hero's journey, like if people are familiar with the hero's journey, this, depending on who teaches it, 12 plus steps of a journey that someone goes on to have self-discovery and rebirth and evolution. It's only the 12th of 12 steps, through one paradigm where you return with the elixir, which is returning with the book or with the business success or whatever. And I feel like experientially, it's felt like 19 months focused on writing a book feels like I should have had it done by now. But on the other hand, it's like, well, there's been a lot of evolution. And even if it takes longer until I return with the elixir, if it takes 2-3 years to write a book, if it feels like a success, then great. If sometimes it takes more than 19 months or 3 years or 4 or 5 years to have a successful business, right? Sometimes people go 10 years and then their business doesn't succeed. But I don't think it's about returning with the elixir. I don't think it's about being successful. I think it's about enjoying the process, evolving, growing, etc. And I feel like I'm growing, I think, more than ever in the last, 18, 19 months. And I'm excited to keep, going after it.
Yeah, brother. Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to share? I think that's a great place to start to close this conversation. So is there anything else you'd love to share with people listening today?
There's one other thing I'll share, and I want to bring like a playful energy to it, because there's a part of me that's like serious that doesn't want to mention it, but there's another part of me that's like, just don't be so serious, because maybe there's a lesson here for me and for others, which is that, so I've been doing some advising for this business, Freedom Farmers, that I co-founded, but I've been an advisor for 2+ years. I haven't been in the trenches on it. So I haven't been properly like in the trenches on a business for about 2.5 years, or let's call it 2 years. Because I sold the things, but I still was on Freedom Farmers for a bit, and then I went to advisory. So it's been about 2 years since I've been like in the trenches on a business. And I've thought this whole time, like, I'll obviously have other businesses. Like I'm an entrepreneur, and like that's a big part of me. But I've always thought like it's got to be this, like the next business got to be like the big one, where like maybe I'll raise a whole bunch of money, I'll build a big team, do some big mission, whatever. And that's still something I intend to do, is, go big. But I've allowed myself the space to focus on writing and also singing more as like a hobby, but having the spaciousness to do that, as well as just other areas of life. But creatively, that's where my energy's gone. But the most random thing happened a couple of nights ago, which I haven't even told you about. And that's why I was thinking, is it appropriate to put on the podcast?
Absolutely.
But, let's just open the doors here. I was just receiving, the voice in my head was just saying, dude, you got to sell crystals. You got to be a crystal. You got to have a crystal business.
Like rocks.
Like yeah, rocks, stones, whatever you call them, but like
magical.
the magical spiritual crystal things.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of people are skeptical of these things. I understand that. There was a point in time where I was as well. But in the last 2 or 3 years, I've become a big fan of crystals. I love my crystals. I got 2 crystals in my pocket right now.
My wife also is like so connected to them, as you know.
Yeah.
Like, Nina is like really connects with them on a like heart level, like really feels like a deep amount of love for different crystals as well.
And I think on one side of the spectrum people are skeptical, on the other side of the spectrum people love it. Somewhere in the middle people might think they look nice in the home to have as like just decorations or whatever, but I feel like I'm on the extreme end of like I love crystals and I always have crystals in my pocket. I see that they have slightly different energies that make I feel like they do influence how I feel and everything. And I was just like, I had all these ideas about this like amazing crystal business. And I got so many ideas about it. And I think that I might be starting a crystal business. And yesterday, for the first day in like 2+ years, I was hardcore in front of the laptop, in all these software tools, doing all this stuff. And I created this epic quiz, which is called What Crystal Are You? And I bought a domain, purposecrystals.com. I set up the whole quiz and everything. And you can take this quiz and then you can see like, what crystal are you? And then I got this idea of like, people do the quiz and everyone that are into crystals will tell their friends like, oh, you gotta do this quiz. And then they do the questions, they answer the questions, multi-choice, and then it says, you're this crystal. And then it gives them the opportunity to learn more about that crystal and buy it if they want to. And then over time, I got this vision of maybe if this all kind of works out and I enjoy it, that maybe we'll have a whole new business, which is a crystal business. So right now I'm more in the play stage. Like it was fun putting this little quiz together and I'm kind of excited to just like see how it resonates with like you and other friends and whatever. And then maybe we'll see. I don't want to get distracted from my writing necessarily. But I feel like, I think the lesson in this and why I'm actually saying this is that to go full circle on like my whole journey, I feel like what I experienced at the start with eBay was I just get products that people want and just put them on eBay and people are buying them. Then I went on this whole journey of learning all the ins and outs of marketing and influence and persuasion and all of that to then cultivate demand for things that people either inherently want or they didn't necessarily inherently want, but through persuasion, I influenced them to think that they wanted it. And ultimately, I stand behind everything that I've sold. I think it's valuable stuff, but I've seen the spectrum of there are things people want and there are things that people get influenced to think that they want. And where I've landed now is kind of like a reconciliation of both, which is that I'm a believer in selling things that people already want, but using marketing to help them realize how much they actually really want it. And using marketing and influence and persuasion to shift their perception of something to be more aligned with like your values and things like that. And that's what I think the point of influence is, to help influence the world to be as you want it to be. That's what I think this is all really about. And I just love crystals. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there that love crystals. And I know that with all these amazing marketing ideas, like having a quiz, like what crystal are you, and having like personifying all the crystals to like give them personality so people can actually understand them more rather than just seeing it as some random stone, but like explaining it in a fun, playful way that people can resonate more with than just a few little dot points about what it's about. It's like, yeah, I think that the lesson here is like with my whole random journey of roping and eventing and farming and all this random stuff, I feel like the takeaway, or one of the takeaways I'd love people to get, is like to hone in on like what they actually are excited about, what they love, and then to cultivate skills and qualities to then you know, share your vision and your values and to kind of combine it all. I think just making money for the sake of making money isn't as fulfilling, and then doing something that you love but not really influencing and getting your mission and vision out there, or doing what you love but not being successful, that kind of sucks as well. But I feel like wrapping it all together, and I feel like a part of me would have thought, crystal business, how big can that really be? Is this even worth it? Whatever. But a part of me is like, got a smile on my face thinking about it. So,
Awesome, man. So what crystal are you?
Lapis lazuli.
I knew it.
And it's in my pocket.
And what does that mean to you?
So to me, lapis lazuli represents, to me, it's the crystal that represents like introspection and insight and wisdom and communication and mystery as well. Kind of like you never really know kind of like what archetype is Ricky going to be in kind of energy. It's kind of got this like multi-dimensional vibe to it and all of that. So yeah, that's what's up. So to embody the archetype of the marketer, if you're watching this and you want to know what crystal you are, I got a complicated link for you. quiz.purposecrystals.com/s/quiz.
All right, we'll put it in the link in the show notes as well.
Awesome. So. I don't expect anyone to necessarily do that, but it would be funny if they did.
Great market research. Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for such an inspiring and engaging conversation. And also thank you just for being such an important part of my life. You're such a huge pillar of support for me, my wife, for our community, for our friends, and just such a beautifully open-hearted and authentic human living your best life. And such a pleasure to be around.
Thanks, brother. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Much love, everybody. Thanks for listening to Leaders with Heart today. We appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And if you found value in today's episode, we would appreciate it massively if you shared this with a friend or a colleague. This is something that can massively benefit their day. And I also appreciate it so much because in the early days of building a podcast, anything like liking, subscribing, giving it a 5-star review, it all supports me spreading this message and mission of leading with heart with as many people as possible. So much gratitude to you for being here. And if you want to connect, I also love hearing from you. You can find mine and the guests' social media details in the show notes below. Mine are paddymac.truth on Instagram and Leaders with Heart on LinkedIn. The website leaderswithheart.com.au is another place you can find me. But until next time, have a beautiful day and sending you so much love.